Recently, one man's retirement email to the 2,000 employees of his company went viral. Michael Steuben didn't hold back on his exit survey after 35 years of work, letting all of his colleagues know and his boss know that employees have, quote, no morale and management is out of touch. Now, clearly, there was a lot of frustration here. So we were interested in talking about how to start off on a better note in the new year. Career expert Shanna Landolt joins me to talk about some of those common workplace issues and how we can resolve them professionally. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be with you, Ben.
All right, let's start with one of the big ones. What do you do if you don't like your boss?
Well, if you don't like your boss, and that happens from time to time for people, one of the things to remember, Ben, is it is temporary. So your boss isn't going to be in that role forever. You're not going to be in that role forever. So just take a breath. Now, remember as well, your boss was put in his or her position because they have some capability to actually do the role. So look for their strengths. You know, if you sit and you focus on their weaknesses, you're going to be upset, you're going to hate your job, you're not going to like it. But there's something to learn from this situation, even if what there is to learn is how not to be a good boss. Now, if you really want to be brave, you can do something called leading up. And when you're leading up, what you can do is come to your boss with suggestions. So you can say, hey, have you considered approaching the situation this way? Now, ultimately, it's up to your boss as to whether they take that advice or not.
And how they take it as well. That's where the bravery comes in.
Exactly. But if you come from being a contribution as opposed to criticizing, they're probably going to at least be open to your suggestions.
All right, well, let's move on to another one because productivity is the name of the game for so many people. We're always looking for that edge on how to be as productive as possible at work. But when chatty coworkers come in and cut into our time, it sometimes can really ruin whatever wave we might have been on. So how do you deal with chatty coworkers?
Well, if you're a leader, you're really walking a fine line because on one hand, you have to be available to the people that you manage, but on the other hand, you've got your own work to do. So one thing that you could do is just let your colleagues know when you're available, when you have open office hours where they can come to your door and bring issues to you. Another thing that you can do is if you've got a project that's pressing, you can say, I don't have time right now, but could we talk at 2 o'clock? Or you could empower somebody else and develop somebody else's leadership by saying, hey, why don't you go and talk with Suzanne? She's great with
Pawning off
things.
responsibility. I like that.
Now, there may be this scenario where you're not a leader and you don't manage a team and people still come and they want to chat with you all the time. There's a couple of solutions here that really work. So first of all, you could get a big old pair of headphones.
I was just going to suggest that.
That's right. Put them on your head. Whether you're listening to music or not, people get the signal that you're not available to talk right now. Some people will put a shh, quiet zone sign on their desk or on their chair. If you've got a project that's really important, you could ask to work from home, or you could go to a conference room, or you could just plain old get into communication and let people know, listen, I need to focus. Please don't come to me with these issues today.
Let's dovetail off of that again on the unproductive front. We get called into a lot of meetings. Sometimes they don't start on time. There's a lot of chatter that doesn't concern us. Sometimes the meeting itself doesn't concern us. How do we deal with getting called into all of these unproductive meetings?
Oh, that's tough for people because so many companies have meetings after meetings after meetings, and it just becomes meeting paralysis. So first of all, remember, even though your calendar comes in 30 and 60-minute chunks, you could have a 10-minute meeting or a 15-minute meeting. Get really clear at the very beginning by creating an agenda. And you can say, here's what we want to accomplish in the meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, you can say, did we accomplish it? Did we not accomplish it? And what are the next steps to take for people? Now, you can also have standing up meetings. If you're standing up, it goes a lot more quickly than if you're sitting down having donuts or bagels. Or let's imagine you're traveling with a colleague. You could have a meeting in a car or on an airplane. If you have a long commute and you use a headset in your car or on the GO train, you could actually schedule meetings for your travel time and make use of that time.
I also wouldn't recommend meetings where everyone's lying down because those go on really long.
They go really long.
Really long. You know, we've been talking a lot about when other people are the issues, but what happens when you yourself make a big mistake? How do you recover from that?
When you make a big mistake, it's hard and it can be embarrassing. The worst thing that you can do, Ben, is to go into denial or pretend it didn't happen, or even worse, try to cover it up. Those are the big mistakes. So get into communication immediately. Go to your boss and say, listen, I want to let you know I made a big mistake here. And use language like, I want you to know that I know how serious this is. I want you to know that I realize the impact here. but then brainstorm, involve your boss in what you can do to mitigate the damage and what you can do to actually prevent this from happening in the future. And sometimes big mistakes, even public mistakes, can have huge learning lessons. And you can share those lessons with your colleagues and your team so that doesn't happen again in the future.
All right, well, let's move on from that. Big learning lesson, performance review time. Yours is not good. What do you do?
Well, this is tough, especially if you weren't expecting a bad review. So the worst thing that you can do in this scenario, Ben, is to get dramatic or get defensive or start to cry or get emotional. So just take a deep breath. This happens to people from time to time. And you want to say things to your manager like, I really appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I didn't know that this was an issue. And then ask questions until you're really crystal clear what the performance issue is, and you can start to see actions that you can take. Then schedule a meeting with your boss for a week later and say, I'm going to put together a plan, I'll bring that plan to you, and I'm going to show you how I will turn this around. Now, don't wait until your very next performance review to check in. So go to your boss and check in periodically and say, hey, I just wanted to see, how are you feeling about this now? Am I going in the right direction? And you'll get on-the-way feedback.
My last one is a rather unique, well, not unique. I think we've all experienced this because we all come to work to make the money to then pay for our lives.
Right.
But you come to work sometimes and you're asked for money for all sorts of reasons. It's a baby shower, it's a retirement, we've got to buy a cake, someone's selling chocolate bars for someone's hockey team, kids' hockey team. How do you say no politely? How do you get out of those things without looking like the odd man out?
Right. Well, the most important thing is to be consistent in your approach. And this is perfect because here we are, January the 3rd. It's the new year. You can actually set a budget. And that budget could be $30, $40, $100, $400, whatever suits you. But let people know, here is my budget for the year. Once it's gone, it's gone. So somebody comes to you this month and they say, can you sponsor my kids' hockey team? You can say, I have a $40 budget. Do you mind if I contribute $2? They'll probably say, terrific. The other thing that you could do is pick one charity or one thing to sponsor so that when people come to you, you can say, you know, every year I sponsor the snowsuit drive. That's where I give my charity dollars instead of piecemeal. So when you say this enough, people will just stop coming to you because they will know that you give to the snowsuit drive.
It seems like really to boil so much of it down, a lot of it has to do with communication and getting out in front of an issue.
Absolutely, and being consistent.
Shannon, thank you so much for being here this morning. Allow me to get out in front of that one. Apologize. Thank you and have a happy new year.
Happy New Year, Ben.